Hello, Make Idaho Better fans. I'm wearing one of the several Make Boise Better hats that I bought, and I don't have any Idaho ones yet, so we're going to go backwards. This week we did a survey about social media, and I am going to walk you through the analysis. Let's do a screen share. Okay. So first of all, as you may know, I like to start every video with a short description of what is Make Idaho Better. In short, I try to make it the easiest way to be a part of state and local solutions by really helping everybody to understand important state and local issues better. How we do that is through weekly surveys, short ones that only take a couple minutes to do, and then I make the results public and I make the analysis public. So hopefully everybody can learn about these things that we're all kind of trying to wrap our heads around and figure out and improve on. The goal being that am able to help you as an Idahoan make your voice heard and make a difference, and then for leaders to make it easier for you to find and implement better solutions by having quantifiable data to back stuff up. So if that sounds cool to you and you want to help out and contribute, click the Do Your Part button and then join our simple email list. The emails is the best way to get these surveys and the results and analysis. That's how I really distribute these. All right. So here's the social media analysis. I'm going to skip ahead here. There's always a link to the survey, a copy of the survey, and the survey results. This week, SurveyMonkey is kind of having an issue with the results link. It's broken at the moment, but I've been told they're working to fix it. So by the time you come to this link and try to fix it, it might be fixed. Anyway, here's the analysis. I'm adding a table of contents because these analysis posts are starting to get kind of long. I'm like checking a lot of things and I want to put it in there for anybody that wants to see it. But if you want to kind of skim or skip to the part that's most interesting to you, hopefully this table of contents will give you some hope and not, so you don't click away when you see that it's a long page. Anyway, analysis posts are really where I do segmentation on these topics. So the overall results are public, but usually the most important views are the ones that are below the surface. So you see how people answer one question, but the real insights are when you slice that to see how different groups of people answered it differently and not just the overall result. For instance, how people of different age groups answered it differently, or genders or locations. And then social media. Why did I want to survey on this week? Well, it's been in the news quite a bit. There's been hackings, data breaches. We just went through an election, and for the last couple of years, Facebook and others have been in the hot seat about fake news and kind of political manipulations of all kinds of things. But yeah, it's a huge part of our lives, kind of independent of these scandals. So I thought it's kind of an interesting topic, and I wanted to know kind of how other people think about how they use social media and help to clarify this for everybody else. So we're going to start with demographics. So this is always good context whenever you're looking at survey results to keep in the back of your mind, well, who are the people that answered? There may be some skew in the answer results or some bias, and this helps you kind of point this out. So we'll work our way from the top left here. We heard from, well, the biggest bar here is a question mark. Why is that a question mark? The way Make Idaho works is we don't ask every demographic question in every survey. That's what makes normal surveys so long and so burdensome. We ask we have short surveys and we usually don't repeat questions unless we have to for some reason. And then we just pull in the answers you already told us from earlier surveys because we try to keep track of who answered which way. But we've since started making these surveys out in the open. So anybody that sees it on Facebook, for instance, can respond. And when that happens, they might not have taken any other surveys with Make Idaho Better before, so we can't really pull in some of these other demographics for that. So we can for some. These people took other surveys from us. So from that group, we saw more women than men responded. And there's obviously this big group that we're not sure. And then when it comes to age group, we don't have any gray on this one because it was something we asked again in this survey to make sure that we had it for everybody, including anybody that hadn't have taken any surveys from before. Got a pretty good spread on age here. We've got, some young people, plenty of young people. We've got plenty of older people, and we've got people in the middle. Oops. As for counties, we had a big group that we're not sure, but the biggest group that we are sure about is Ada County. That's probably because we switched from Make Boise Better to Make Idaho Better, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we're building up our list of kind of survey respondents from those other areas. And then in terms of social media usage, almost everybody that took this survey is using some form of social media on a daily basis. So we're going to get into that in some more detail, but that's good context. So I would say another thing to keep in mind is that because this was a voluntary survey that you could decide to do or not do, we probably are hearing from people that are more interested in a social media topic. So that would be reflected in the answers, or they use it quite a bit, or they have strong opinions about social media. So, perhaps if we had a broader group or participation from people that are kind of less interested in the topic inherently, the answers would be different. So we'll keep that in the back of our minds. All right, let's start with how much do people use social media? So we had this question that was asked was basically, how often do you use each of these different types, these different platforms? From Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, yada, yada, yada. So I asked about, 9 of the most common ones. Now, this overall result doesn't kind of have the fine-grained answers because we asked multiple times a day, most days, a couple times a week. There was a lot of different answers, so there's a lot of data that this question collected. So the way SurveyMonkey presented this was in a weighted average. So this basically just shows which platforms have the most usage kind of weighted by the responses. Definitely the top ones are Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So, okay, that's a good start. Let's see what else can we know. Well, maybe we want to think about how many different platforms people use on a daily basis. So because I know how they answered each of those platforms, I could count up how many of them they answered for multiple times a day or most days. I called that a daily usage. You can see that our biggest group here is saying they only use one on a daily basis. But, we've got close to 40% that say they use more than one. So that's pretty interesting. We even got some that said 5 or 6 on a daily basis. That's pretty wild. And actually, this number is probably bigger if you consider more social media sites. So I just included 9 of the big ones, but there's dozens out there. So I would say this would be a lower end estimate. So that's a really good context. So let's break that down by age. My theory would be that older folks are checking less platforms on a daily basis. younger people are being called digital natives. They're, constantly plugged in, constantly looking at their phones. So like, does that play out in our survey respondents? And the short answer is, yeah, it looks like it does, because this amount that are only do one, it looks like proportionately, people in their 40s and over and older are kind of twice as likely to only do one a day as people in their teens, 20s, or 30s. But it's not like hard and fast, because you've got people in their 60s or older that are doing 3 a day, 5 a day. So it looks like, maybe as a rule of thumb, if you're older, maybe you're only doing 1 or maybe 2. And if you're younger, you might be doing 2 or more. Okay, this is getting a little complicated, but stick with me. So this chart, in one chart, we're showing the proportions of usage for each platform. So let's look at the legend here. The dark green shows daily usage. Facebook and then this is sorted by daily usage. So on the furthest to the left is the one with the biggest group of daily users. The one on the right is the one with the smallest group of daily users of our respondents. So, and then the red is showing the amount of people that never use that out of our group. So Facebook has the most daily users by far. It looks like 90% about use it on a daily or weekly basis, which is way more than anything else. And then Instagram is the next biggest on daily users, and then YouTube. But YouTube, if you count both daily and weekly, has more regular usage than Instagram. And there's very few, almost in line with Facebook, in how few have never used it. So these are definitely the most used, and then you've got a bunch of other ones here that aren't used as much, like Snapchat or Reddit. This is interesting, really interesting, and I think there's a lot we can pull out of this. There's a lot of information on this one chart. If you want to get really crazy, we can look at the next chart. What's missing in this chart is you can't see how it breaks down by another demographic. This is everybody together, how they use the different platforms. Hold on to your hats. Okay, this is just crazy. This is insane. This is the same view, but it's adding on age. So it's on the left here. So you can see kind of how people in their teens and 20s use the platforms compared to people in their 60s through 80s. So something that stands out, like Instagram has a really big daily usage for 30s or less. It starts to taper down in the 40s and 50s. Well, actually, 40s, 50s, and 60 plus are kind of all the same. They're, smaller groups of daily actives, but still using. Snapchat, I would expect Snapchat to be only young people. Definitely looks like that. Teens and 20s have the most. 30s are less, but still using it daily. And then pretty much after that, nobody's using it on a daily basis. Anyways, there's so much in here. We could talk about it for hours. Not going to do that. You can come back to it if you want. Okay, so these two charts are, I'm trying to kind of focus in on discomfort at this point. So we've talked about usage. How do people think about social media kind of more broadly now? Are there things that you're uncomfortable about? So two of the questions I asked about that are kind of, do you find it anxiety provoking? And do you find yourself wanting to cut back on your social media usage? How often? So between these two, it looks like we're pretty spread out on this anxiety provoking one. Definitely leans towards yes, it's anxiety provoking. We're about around 50% if you add these two up that say yes, compared to about 30% that say no. But I think this chart is actually kind of showing more discomfort. So if you add these three up here every day, a few times a week, and about once a week, this is showing that that's 20%, that's 30%, that's 15%. So that's like 65% right there that is saying they want to cut back. They feel like they want to cut back on a weekly basis. That's kind of crazy, right? On the other hand, there's only 10% that have said they've never wanted to cut back. Okay, so that's interesting. Let's dive deeper into that. So we've got a heat chart here, and this is kind of overlaying those two questions and kind of showing by a difference in size which combination of answers occurred most often. And the biggest one is definitely people that said, yes, it's anxiety provoking, and they feel like they want to cut back a few times a week. The next biggest is they feel like they want to cut back every day. What stands out to me, and this color is based on this anxiety provoking. So it's, all the dark greens are saying, no, it's definitely not anxiety provoking. All the reds are saying yes. So this is interesting. It definitely looks like there's a connection between it's anxiety provoking and I want to cut back, but it's not totally clear. So look, there's a bunch of people that are saying it's not anxiety provoking, but I want to cut back on a regular basis. So that's interesting. And we're going to get into kind of more of the problems that people see with social media. But to me, I think those are probably like a specific group of people that that kind of have views on specific types of problems. For instance, maybe they're concerned about how much screen time they have looking at their phone in a given day or a week. And on the other hand, maybe a problem that lends itself more to somebody that's feeling anxiety from social media is like comparing yourself to other people, and kind of feeling like your life isn't as good as what other people are portraying theirs as. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit more. So real quick, while we're talking about anxiety still, I wanted to pull in gender. And remember from our samples demographics, we only had gender for about half of our respondents, and there were more women than men. But I just had this theory, and I've seen this elsewhere, and I linked to an article here, right here, that men are maybe less likely to compare themselves negatively to other people. So maybe they struggle with that less with social media than women do. And though I didn't ask that specifically, it does appear that there's a difference, at least for the people that we did hear from, on how anxiety-provoking social media is based on your gender. So in the yes category, there was about twice as big of a proportion of women that answered that way compared to men. And then in the yes, absolutely, like very anxiety-provoking, there weren't any men in that group. So you add those two together, you've over double the amount of women that said affirmatively it's anxiety-provoking compared to men. So this blue bar for men stands out in the no categories as being less likely to say that. So that's interesting. Yeah. We're going to talk more about anxiety and the problems in a bit. Let's focus on the benefits now. So I asked kind of what are the biggest benefits? Rank them, please. So connecting with friends and family, discovering interesting content, meeting new people through groups and things like that, community involvement, sharing your thoughts and interests, and promoting your business. So this chart is showed like the bigger the bar, the higher priority, the higher you ranked it. So the top two here, it looks like there's some separation here. So between the biggest one, connecting with friends and family, and the second biggest, which is discovering interesting content, those are much more voted for than promoting your business, which is the least one. Interestingly enough, I did ask in another question, do you use social media in your job? And I looked at basically how people thought about the benefits with that as an angle, and you didn't really vote much more for this as a significant benefit, even if you use it in your job. So I think people are I thought maybe people like that use it in their job understand it more, realize the power for the business, maybe vote for that higher, but that wasn't really the case. So I guess everybody's kind of on the same page, relatively. But let's break it down. So let's break it down by age. So within each of these benefits, we can see how the average ranking for each age group kind of considered it. So you can see it's kind of sorted here from left to right on the highest rank. So this chart's a little different than the last one, where the biggest bar was showing the highest rank or the nearest to the top. This one's different. So this is averaging them out. So a rank of something that was number one most often is going to have a smaller number average. That's why the bar is shorter. So connecting with friends and family, which you remember was the top one in the other chart. It still is here. We're just seeing how different groups voted for it. So there's really only one thing that jumped out at me with this view, besides the fact that it seems pretty smooth. Like the way different age groups answered each of these doesn't seem super different to me. I think the one that does seem different and noteworthy is this sharing your thoughts and interests. I would have expected that young people would rank this as a higher benefit. It was actually people in their 50s or older that ranked it higher, quite a bit higher than people in their 10s and 20s. This was the last benefit in the ranking that they chose, which I think there's a stereotype that young people want to just push their thoughts and interests and feelings to everyone about everything. But this the way that they thought about this answer kind of maybe says otherwise. It's actually the older folks that are seeming to value that higher. So anyway, I'm going to move on. Let's talk about challenges. We've already kind of alluded to this a little bit. So here's the overall result. Again, the bigger the bar for these default SurveyMonkey visualizations shows the higher the rank. The thing that stands out to me here is there's a lot less separation between like the top problems and the bottom problems. They're all kind of close together. To me, that tells me that there's not a lot of people aren't answering them the same way, so that there's more separation and like a clearer pattern emerging. People are kind of doing all different orders. We'll just hold aside, I guess one possible explanation of that would be this is a annoying question type that people don't take seriously, and it ends up being random, but I want to believe that the people that take the survey are thoughtful and doing it intentionally. But the top two biggest problems were looking at a screen too much and fake news or scams. So let's dig into this a little deeper. Let's do the age again. Now, I had a bunch of things stand out to me about this, which I've kind of indicated here, and we'll talk through them briefly. But the first thing is like, look how uneven across the age groups people responded to these. I already expected that from the overall results, but like seeing it by the age really confirms that. It's like all over the place. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of rhyme or reason to some of these. But let's dig in. Let's think about some of what we can see in this anyway. So the letter A here, what I thought was interesting is the 10s and 20s. Again, remember the highest priority ones are the shortest bars in this view. Fake news was least prioritized by the young folks here. So because there's so many of these things, I'm just going to call out what stood out to me as odd or interesting, and I won't go deep into like theorizing or interpreting, but a couple of them I will. So the second one, check this out. It's kind of the opposite. So on the last one, fake news was the least prioritized by teens and 20s. But with screen time, they were most concerned about it. There's almost like and this one is maybe the only one, the comparisons is kind of like it almost, but the only one that kind of just like, there's a trend almost. The older you are, the less likely you care about this. So as digital natives and potentially using all kinds of technology more often than older folks, maybe young people, maybe that's why young people are saying screen time is so important to them, the most important thing to them. Let's move on here. In-person interactions. So there's one group, the 50s, people in their 50s that rank that much higher than the rest in terms of like a big problem. There wasn't a whole, I mean, there was relative agreement among these other age groups, and then people in their 50s were like, this is a big problem, whereas everybody else was kind of like middle of the road. So I don't know what to make of that, and this could just be noise. I have to say, with all of these kind of things that we're looking at, this could just be noise. Potentially, if we heard from more people and had bigger sample sizes, these kind of, maybe some of this stuff would erase itself and it wouldn't be the case. But because it's here, I'll at least tell you what I'm seeing in this. We won't say that these are facts or conclusions we can draw about society writ large, but it doesn't hurt to kind of wonder. Privacy. So in the same way that those 50-year-olds were much more concerned about in-person interactions kind of weakening, 40-year-olds seem more interested or more concerned about data privacy or data security. Another thing here is comparisons. So comparing yourself to other people and maybe feeling like your life's not as good as theirs because they're presenting a doctored image of themselves as a world and only the good things they're showing. There almost looks like a trend here. You care more about this as you are younger. The older you are, maybe you care less about it. Maybe that's you're more sure of yourself, comfortable in your own skin as you get older. But young people, teens and 20s, are definitely the most concerned about this out of everybody. Really close with screen time, comparisons and screen time. And then another outlier here is the 60s to 80s. They were more concerned about people becoming more close-minded from social media. The algorithms kind of telling them the same thing, what they already believe over and over again, making them more close-minded than the other groups. So I don't know. Interesting. I think the two things I'm most interested in here are seemingly a relationship between concern about screen time and age, and also age and comparisons as problems. Let's break it down by anxiety again. So same thing, but instead of doing it by age, we're doing it by how anxiety provoking you think social media is. So in each of these groups, the furthest to the left is it's not anxiety provoking at all. The furthest to the right is it's absolutely anxiety provoking. So the things that stood out to me here is, let's go back to the comparisons concept. If you think social media is really anxiety provoking, you ranked this, the comparisons the highest. And it seems like as people think it's less anxiety provoking, the less they kind of voted for comparisons as a big problem. So perhaps that's a matter of sensitivity. Perhaps if you're a more sensitive person, you think social media is more anxiety provoking and comparisons are a bigger issue for you. I don't know. One theory. Next one here, closed-mindedness. I thought it was interesting that people, again, the people that feel the most anxiety from social media ranked closed-mindedness the most. But then they also were fake news the least. So when I saw that, I was thinking, why would that be? And first thing that came to mind is that maybe these two things are pretty similar. Maybe they're almost synonymous, the way people thought about them. So fake news is making you closed-minded, or because you're getting more closed-minded, you're more susceptible to fake news. So maybe those aren't as clear of a distinction, these two categories, as they were in my mind when I wrote the survey. So I'll just say that. Let's move on, though. Let's go to the big picture here. You know, we've been in the weeds a little bit, but let's pull back. You know, given all that we've looked at now and thought about, is social media a positive or negative thing in people's lives? You know, the overall results of this show more people thinking it's positive. So that's pretty interesting. You know, while the biggest group is saying it's neither positive nor negative, it is what it is. But about twice as many people are saying it's positive compared to its negative. So that's almost the opposite of what we saw with like the discomfort, right? The anxiety. You know, twice as many people almost saying that it's anxiety provoking, and 65% of people saying they want to cut back on a weekly basis. So that's interesting. Let's look at this by we'll skip ahead. Look at this by anxiety. So my thought from that overall view was that people think, yeah, it's anxiety provoking, and then there are challenges with using social media, but it's a good thing. You know, there's things we need to overcome, but there's so many good things that come from it. It's worth it. It's positive. So I was curious, like, are the people that feel anxiety from it the most negative? And this negative group here, the biggest group of them is feeling like it's like, most of them are saying it's really anxiety provoking. But of those that are positive, or that are like, it is what it is, a lot of them are saying that it's anxiety provoking too. So they're not feeling like it's too much necessarily. It's just something they need to work at managing. So the other angle here is age. My take on this is that it doesn't change a whole lot based on your age. I mean, most of them are kind of neutral or positive, with one exception being maybe if you're in your teens or 20s, you're more likely to say that it's positive versus neutral. So yeah, I think that people feel that it's it's a good thing, or it's a whatever thing. And even though it's anxiety provoking, there's a lot of problems. It's just something we need to manage. Not that it needs to not that it's overall bad. So that's everything for the charts, the quantitative analysis. Now I will plug the insightful comments. I don't know if everybody reads these, but I would highly encourage you to. I always am blown away by how thoughtful some people's thoughts are on these. So I always ask two questions: what gets too much attention about this topic, and what doesn't get enough attention about this topic? And I always get like, whoa, I never thought about it that way. So I've done my best to pull out the ones that I think are the most interesting or insightful or representative of other comments. So they're not all kind of as thought out as these ones. And then I've highlighted, or I've bolded sections of them so you can kind of skim to find the topics within the comments that you might want to read in full. So I would highly suggest you do that. Really good stuff in there. So yeah, that's all for the analysis. You can check out our other analysis at this link. Yeah, here's my gift for the week as a social media, there's good and bad. You got to manage, balance it, and make the most of it. Is what I think. What I'm trying to get go with that gift. But anyway, if you don't buy it, make it better. If you don't think that our results make sense, or they're just skewed because we didn't hear from the right people, and you have a different point of view, please sign up and help us do better research. I want to include your voice and represent your view in this research, so that we can all get a better clue about what people think, including you. The more participation we have, the better results we'll have, the better the impact can be, and the more understanding everybody will have. So please join us and do your part. So thanks a lot. Stay tuned for next week.